Brazil, tropical and historic, home to scenic beaches and some of the greatest race car drivers in the world. Today, the Kart FedEx Championship Series invades Rio de Janeiro. Brazilian drivers give the Champ Car Series a unique international flavour. Tony Kanaan nearly won Long Beach after leading 44 laps, while fellow countryman Helio Castroneves battled wheel to wheel with Juan Montoya in Nazareth. Their goal is to repeat Andre Ribeiro's performance of 1996. Christian Fittipaldi is on pole position and chasing the checkered flag. The mountains around Rio de Janeiro provide the backdrop to round 5 of the 1999 PPG Kart Championship. Hello, this is Ben Edwards with Guy Hobbs, looking forward to the Kart Rio 200. It's the 4th time that the Champ Car teams have come to this track, the Emerson Fittipaldi Speedway at the Nelson Piquet International Raceway, and we've got fireworks and all sorts of celebrations to get this race underway. We've had rain as well this weekend. Thankfully, the race is going to run. It has dried off now.
It's finally dried off. It takes them quite a while to blow the moisture off of the track using the jet dryers, but they've been running the vehicles all morning long. They've dried the track off. We should be set and safe to go racing, and it should be a quick race today here in Brazil.
There is the man on pole position. It's his first ever pole position in front of his home crowd, Christian Fittipaldi. We spoke to him yesterday.
I'm really excited, definitely. There's no doubt about that. Starting from pole here in Rio is really important, but the race for me tomorrow is 100 times more important than today. Hopefully we're going to do very well tomorrow, and we're going to come out of here like in very, very good shape. So we're really thinking a lot on tomorrow, and I have an extra reason to be happy, like a bonus reason, because I'm starting from pole. But even if I was starting in the top 3 or 4, I would be very happy, because it's a long race tomorrow, and tomorrow what really counts.
Christian Fittipaldi talking yesterday. He's been consistently in the points this year, but can he take his first ever win? That really would be quite some achievement. Behind him, as the cars are warming up here, you can see the green and white car of Dario Franchitti. Now, Dario took pole position here 12 months ago, lost out by just 100th of a second in their qualifying battle yesterday, but still looked extremely confident following that qualifying session. Let's take the opportunity now to run through the entire grid of 27 cars lined up to do battle. Christian Fittipaldi then, his first pole in his 66th race and 5th season of Champ Car racing. Dario Franchitti, his best result this year, a 2nd place at Long Beach. On the 2nd row, Juan Montoya looking for a hat-trick of wins, and Gilles de Ferran, who's been unlucky in Rio so far. Brian Herter was 4th here last year. He's on row 3. Jimmy Vasser has run well here in the past. Row 4 sees Tony Kanaan and Tarso Marquez back out for Penske again. The 5th row of the grid, Patrick Carpentier and Greg Moore, the 2 players full-size cars together. Moore needs to get some points today. Helio Castroneves and Paul Tracy line up on row number 6. Row 7 sees Max Papis and Cristiano D'Amata in the Toyota-powered Reynard. And next up, Michael Andretti down on row 8, ahead of PJ Jones. Row 9, Adrian Fernandez and Richie Hearn. Fernandez a lot further down than expected. Alonso Jr. lines up on row 10, just ahead of Scott Pruitt. Row 11, somebody coming back, it's Walter Sales with Alex Barron alongside him. And then Roberto Moreno standing in for Mark Blundell this weekend. He has Michel Jourdain alongside him. Row 13 of the grid, and that sees Maurizio Gugelmin, the other Pac West car, a long way down the field. Robbie Gordon is alongside him, and at the back, the young Brazilian, the rookie this year, Luis Garcia Jr. And the last 3 cars on the grid, in fact, not establishing a lap time in qualifying. Each of them had their own problems. Gugelmin waved off his attempt, but there wasn't a chance for him to go back out again afterwards. Taking a quick look at the onboards here, guys, starting off with Michael Andretti.
Great view. You better get a good look at Michael and see him working in his cockpit. He is just one of the many onboard cameras we have here today. Luckily, the clouds have lifted and we've been able to get the helicopter up, which transmits those pictures for us.
Let's just take you through the rest of the onboards as well that we have here this afternoon. Hopefully we'll be getting some decent pictures from them. This does provide plenty of overtaking opportunities, this track. It has 2 really quite sharp corners where the drivers are braking from 215, nearly 220 miles per hour. and braking hard, changing down to third gear for those two corners.
And slowing down by as much as 100 miles per hour in those corners. And we've heard Christian say, great overtaking possibilities there, but you've got to be very heavy on the brakes. And the thing is, you just got to, if you go in late and go heavy on the brakes, by the end of the race, you've got to hope you've still got the brakes there to do that, or else it's war.
Yes, and we've seen the problems of brake failure here in the past. It happened to Mark Blundell a few years ago. Just looking at the race analysis, it is a 1.8 mile oval. Race distance less this year at 108 laps. That's some 25 laps less than they have run here in the last few seasons. Now let's just take the moment to look at the points as we go into the race. Juan Montoya, the young Colombian, amazingly 2 points ahead of anybody else in the championship. Fernandez close behind. Greg Moore, Michael Andretti both on 40 points. And Dario Franchitti and Christian Fittipaldi are now both tied on 35 points, with Fittipaldi having gained the extra point for pole.
Interesting that Montoya's points, though, 40 of those points coming from 2 wins, so only 5 points scored in the other 2 events, so he's done very well to put himself on top of the championship.
Juan Montoya coming in to replace Alex Zanardi and really just picked up where the Italian left off with that Ganassi team, winning races and featuring in qualifying and in the races in all of the events really we've seen so far this year. Remember, he had a great opportunity in Japan at Motegi, but they ran out of fuel, and so that was the reason he didn't challenge Fernandez at the end.
That was a tough break for him in Japan, came very close to winning that one. And Long Beach, everyone suspected he would be good, but the Nazareth race, I think, surprised people a little bit for him to win so quickly on an oval.
Just looking here at the 3 last winners of this race. Greg Moore last year, just beating Alex Zanardi in the closing stages. Paul Tracy, 97, that was interesting because Bobby Rahal led the best part of that race, only to run out of fuel with about a lap and a half to go. And the first race victory here was taken, suitably enough, by a Brazilian driver, Andre Ribeiro. Ribeiro not racing anymore. He is working with Roger Penske in South America, a lot of Roger Penske's business plans. And I don't quite know what Roger Penske's up to, but we've seen a lot of changes this week with his business.
He certainly is the story of the week. Sold all of his racing properties for $705 million to ISC, which is an international speedway corporation owned and run by the France family, which run NASCAR. 23 million of that 700 million was cash up front. That sale should be complete by the end of summer. It'd be interesting to see what Roger's planning to do with all that money.
Also, interestingly, he has bought 2 Lola chassis for the rest of this season. Maybe not to race, they're going to test them initially, and they're due to be out on the 24th of May. Alonso Jr. will test one of the Lola chassis at the Nazareth Speedway. They're saying it's for evaluation purposes, just to see exactly how the car performs and to try and determine the areas that perhaps their car's not so good. But interestingly, on this grid here today, as you're just looking through the onboard cameras at the moment, on this grid today, Tarso Marquez in one of the Penskes is in 8th place and is the fastest of the Mercedes runners, and the first Lola, the only Lola, Helio Castroneves, is 11th.
And he's out-qualified Alonso Jr. and not known to be an oval racer. And kind of interesting, because previously Tarso Marquez has replaced Alonso Jr. when Al was injured with a foot injury from Homestead, but now they've come back with 2 cars. He's an interesting story, as is, of course, Colt Salas coming back, and Roberto Moreno doing the super sub job, filling in for Mark Blundell.
Here we go then, getting ready for the green flag. Christian Fittipaldi in the black car has Dario Franchitti on his outside. Remember last year, Dario Franchitti had pole position, but he was a bit slow away, and it gave Tony Kanaan an opportunity to run into the first corner ahead. And we've seen accidents out of this corner on cold tyres in the past, but as they get away, an excellent start for Christian Fittipaldi. No, it's not. No, it's not. They're out of order, and the starter has given the yellow flag. They're not happy with the order of the cars, and they all have to slow down again, take their positions alongside one another, reform in grid positions and try again.
I think they're going to say that Christian was maybe just a little too far ahead. They do actually have a marker point, and in the drivers' meeting, they sit with the 2 front row starters, and they talk about where they can actually start putting the power on. I think they're going to say that Christian may have started just a little bit early, so they'll try and do it again.
At least it's given the rear tyres an opportunity to warm up a little bit. Some 2 years ago, Dario Franchitti was involved in a big melee at the start of the race, involving himself, Patrick Carpentier, a number of other cars. They all spun off as they tried to put some 800 horsepower down out of that last corner. Well, this time they've done it okay first time around, and now they've got a little more heat in the tyres. But watch out for Montoya. on that second row, in the familiar red car, the red colours of Team Ganassi, he's got Gilles de Ferran alongside him, and Montoya made an excellent getaway just now. I wonder if he's going to repeat that. Here we go, Ben. Building up to the start of the Karts Rio 200, round 5 of the 1999 FedEx Championship Series. It is the battle between Fittipaldi on the inside, Franchitti on the outside, and here we go, the green flag, and surely this time it's a clean start as they run down towards turn 1 for the first time in this race. Watch out for Montoya. Montoya's on the dirt on the inside. Montoya's going for the lead. Montoya into the lead. Has he gone in too fast? No, a beautiful passing manoeuvre from Juan Pablo Montoya, and it's Fittipaldi in second.
And look at the lead he's stretched out. From the second row, he's jumped out to a huge lead. And that's going to be one of the tightest packs I've seen on the start in a kart race for a long time. Everybody in there. Montoya brilliant to the lead, Fittipaldi in second, and Dario Franchitti in third.
If he ever gets an opportunity, if he ever sense there's a chance to overtake, you just sense that Juan Montoya will always take it. He never holds back if there's an opportunity to go past. Look at this gaggle. Somebody getting a bit sideways.
Junior, a little bit of sideways movement there. Now remember, Robbie Gordon started at the back in the 200s, but remember Japan, he started way at the back, and within 8 laps he was all the way up to about 10th position. So watch out for maybe a hard charge from Gordon, who had problems in the qualifying with his Toyota. He could be coming up through this grid, but at the moment, Montoya's got it all.
We're looking back from Tony Kanan's car. He is in 5th place, and you're looking back at Jimmy Vasser in 6th place. 2 Reynard Hondas, both of them featured well last year. And in fact, the Honda power always seems to do well around this track, has lots of tractability and performance out of these slower corners. On board now with Jimmy Vasser, and he runs in 6th position. Let me just quickly run through the order then. It's Montoya, Fittipaldi, Franchitti, the top 3. 4th, de Ferran. 5th for Tony Kanaan. 6th for Jimmy Vasser. 7th is Greg Moore. Now, Moore's made a good start because he started down in 10th place, and he's always featured at this track. So watch out for the Canadian. His teammate Carpentier is 8th, Paul Tracy 9th, and Tarso Marquez in the Penske lies in 10th.
Well, it's interesting to see that Carpentier has managed to stick with his teammate and go up to pick up those positions, because he started alongside Greg Moore on that row. Tarso Marquez is probably the one who has failed the most at this point, dropping back to the 10th position. And PJ Jones has now worked his way up into 13th. Watch out for Adrian Fernandez, though, who was back in 17th. Didn't have the qualifying run he would like, but we know he's strong on these ovals.
But also watch out for Michael Andretti, who started a long way down the order, in fact, in 15th position. He's in 16th at the moment, as you can see from the graphic in top left-hand corner of the screen. This is a replay of the start. Now, Guy, just talk us through Montoya's move on the inside.
Montoya's down on the inside. He's on the inside of row 2. He ducks even lower. Franchitti comes down to try and fit in behind Fittipaldi. Fittipaldi goes up to block Franchitti, and then Montoya just slips down the inside. And amazingly, they all get in line and get through turn 1 safely. But a fantastic start for Montoya, which has given him now a 1.83 second lead.
Remarkable, as you say, and once again, the exuberant Colombian who puts so much energy and effort into his driving and yet is so smooth with it, has grabbed the initiative in the early stages of this race. Bit of movement on Franchitti's car. You can see how hard he's trying in the slipstream, but of course he's got that problem that he is in the slipstream. He's in the dirty air behind the black Swift of Christian Fittipaldi, whereas Juan Montoya has clean air. He's got the opportunity to make the break.
The thing now for these two guys, Fittipaldi and Franchitti, they need to hook up and they need to chase down Montoya as a pair. They'll be quicker as opposed to battling each other, because that's just costing them time. And of course Montoya is able to stretch his lead, and that's exactly what Montoya wants. He wants to see these guys fighting. You see them coming down the main straightaway in the line. You see the guys try and break the draft. Franchitti and Fittipaldi need to hook up and play together to try and catch up with Montoya. I should point out that Gilles de Ferran is the first of the Goodyear cars. He is in 4th position overall.
Pretty fast lap times they're doing as well. Average speed 167.995 miles per hour from Montoya on that last lap. And that, with a full tank of fuel, would still have put him somewhere like 20th place on the grid. So that's pretty impressive from Montoya. He's under the 40-second barrier and the fastest man on the circuit. You're looking briefly at the moment at Tarso Marquez in the Penske. Remember, if you have forgotten that Tarso Marquez has competed in just 2 races this year, replacing Al Unser Jr. when Little Al had the broken ankle, so Tarso Marquez came in to replace him in Motegi in Japan and at Long Beach. And the team really very impressed I was talking to Nick Guzet earlier this week, and he was saying that the team have found him extremely professional and very rapid as well, and great feedback from Marquez. He's running in 10th place.
He's supposed to be particularly good at engineering a car and being able to point out exactly what needs changing. A lot of guys have a hard time identifying whether it's the springs or the tyre pressure or what it is, but Marquez is apparently very, very good at that, and that, of course, helps you go faster.
So Juan Montoya, our race leader, you're on board at the moment with the star, one of the stars. Well, Juan Montoya was, of course, perhaps the major star of Nazareth, but PJ Jones here was another star of Nazareth. What a tremendous race, his best ever result.
And he created his own moment, too. He went in a little hot, got sideways, he had a spin, which brought out a yellow flag, which actually saved him, and he was able to pit and get back out and then finish up in the top 3 at the end of the day, which was amazing for PJ Jones. Great to see him having a good run. People were questioning him just a little bit because Adrian Fernandez was performing so well. But don't forget, even though they race for the same team, they're not in the same chassis at this point.
Juan Montoya, race leader after 8 laps completed by 1.6 seconds from Christian Fittipaldi. As Juan Montoya leads this race by 1.4 seconds from Christian Fittipaldi, the nephew of the man after whom this track is named. Emerson Fittipaldi, very involved in the running of this race, promoter of this race for the last 3 years, and Juan Montoya leading Christian Fittipaldi by that 1.4 seconds. Franchitti still holding on to third, and he just can't seem to break through that dirty air of Christian Fittipaldi.
It's interesting, you really don't want to give Montoya any kind of advantage if you can help it, but he's got the advantage now, and his pit crew was so good at Nazareth that when he was battling with Castroneves, that Castroneves actually managed to get by him twice on the track. But when it came to pit stops, the placement of the Target Ganassi team, they were able to watch Castroneves make his stop, and when he was done and they were sending him back out, they would just stop their pit work and send Montoya back out to get the lead back again. So that with this little bit of a lead and his pit positioning, Montoya again is going to be really tough to beat, especially in those pit stops.
He is, but he's not pulling away as much as we might have expected. It looks to me as though the car not working quite as well as he's had in the last couple of races. Actually, last lap around, in fact, it was Dario Franchitti who set the fastest lap, but this lap around, it is Christian Fittipaldi who's just set the fastest lap at 169.489 miles per hour. They really are flying. That's a lap time of around 39.5 seconds. Very quick times indeed, and perhaps the conditions, not too hot, are ideal for very quick lappery.
And Christian has just knocked off about 0.4 of a second on the last couple of laps on the lead of Montoya. So Christian may be starting to reel him in a little bit. Dario Franchitti dropping off a bit, and then you can see it's quite a big gap back to Gilles de Ferran, and then behind Gilles de Ferran, Tony Kanaan in the McDonald's car. Jimmy Vasser currently runs in 6th position. There you see Jimmy, and right behind him, Greg Moore, Patrick Carpentier, and then Paul Tracy, Dario Franchitti's teammate.
Yes, Tracy's come up well because Paul Tracy did not qualify particularly well for this race. He ended up 12th on the grid, and he's up into 9th place. Meanwhile, Michael Andretti's made up 1 place since the early lap, but that's all. He's in 15th position, 16th place for Adrian Fernandez, so he's not been able to make up much ground. Perhaps the driver's just taking things a little bit steady in these early stages, but certainly some quick laps being set up front. Last time around, again, it was Christian Fittipaldi a fraction faster than Juan Montoya, and as they cross the line again, this time it's Franchitti of those 3 who's set the fastest lap.
What's going to get interesting too is, Ben, they're going to start catching up on some of the slower cars. That would be Luis Garcia Jr., Walter Salas and Michel Jourdain running 25th, 26th and 27th, and they are about to come up and catch and start getting into traffic, and that's going to make a big, big difference here.
Now let's just look at the equipment that we have running up front at the moment. The Reynard with a Honda engine and Firestone tyres leading this group. And in fact, it's the same combination in 3rd place in the hands of Dario Franchitti. But in between, we've got something entirely different. We have the Swift chassis, the black car there of Christian Fittipaldi, the Swift chassis with a Ford engine. First Ford pole this year. So on the Firestone tyres, that was one of the major changes over the winter. The Newman Haas team switching from Goodyear to Firestone tyres.
And they did that at the very last moment, actually, of pre-season testing. But immediately, the first time they went out with the Firestones, Michael Andretti was a lot quicker than he had been on the Goodyears, and they just confirmed the decision and that it was the right decision to go to the Firestone tyres.
First Goodyear runner in this race is Gilles de Ferran in 4th position, but he's now 6.2 seconds behind race leader. And there you are, as you were saying a moment ago, Guy, they're beginning to come up behind slow traffic. The first car, that green and red car, looks a little bit like Adrian Fernandez's machine, but it's not. It's actually the car of Luis Garcia Jr., the Brazilian who's come into this series from Indy Lights last year. And as you can see, Juan Montoya coming right up behind him. And remember, traffic had a determining factor here last year in that battle between Greg Moore and Alex Zanardi.
And there was a lot of ruckus about that too. Zanardi was complaining a lot about the slower car that was involved in that incident. And here, because unlike the usual ovals where we run, where it's quick all the way around, because of these turns 1 and 4, in this shifting and braking, that's where you don't want to catch traffic, because then you can certainly lose positions. Montoya's got by Garcia fine. Here comes Christian Fittipaldi. He makes it 5, but now Franchini's going to catch him in the wrong spot, and that's going to cost Dario some time.
It is, unless Garcia gets out of the way quickly, and he doesn't, so Franchini definitely losing a little bit of time there through turns 1 and 2. 2 kinks on this track as well. It's very much a D-shaped oval. The corner they're going into just there is a flat-out kink. Now they come into turn 4, which is one of these areas where they have to brake, change down to third gear, into the bend, about 130 miles an hour, and then accelerating hard out of it again onto the start-finish straight. And that's given Montoya a little bit of a break. Let's see, as they went across the line this time, the gap up to 1.1 seconds from 0.96. So he just took a little bit of advantage of that.
Of course, the setup of the cars will be critical as to how the tyres will wear and how they will go away. So Christian's tyres may be handling better, just, you know, even though they're the same tyre, Firestone, they may be just doing a little bit better than Montoya's. They may hold up better. They may go up to the fuel window, which is about 33 laps, is where we expect to see under green flag racing our first pit stop. And sometimes you see when the guys have a completely horrible tyre, they have to go in early.
Jimmy Vasser coming into the pits unexpectedly early on lap number 22. He had been running in 6th position, and Vasser on that speed limit button. That's why his head's rocking back and forth as he comes into the pits. The car misfiring, but it's misfiring on purpose because that speed limiter doesn't allow the engine to run too fast. A tyre change and a refuel. Now then, interesting strategy. Is this a problem? It doesn't look as though they're looking around the back of the car, so perhaps there is an area of concern there. It's not just a routine stop. It's this normal spray of water when they refuel. Major worries. Jimmy Vasser waving as if to say, what's the problem, boys? And eventually he gets away. But obviously there are concerns there.
He was running 6th at the time, and I mentioned right before we went to commercial, if you've got an ill-handling car and just can't stay out there, you've got to come and change the tyres, which I thought maybe that was the problem with Jimmy. Maybe he had a left rear going down on him, but obviously there was something else wrong because they were taking a look at the back there behind the cars. They now go, the leaders go by Michel Jourdain Jr. Next they'll be working on Roberto Moreno, filling in for Mark Blundell this weekend. Of course, Mark had that horrendous crash here a couple of years ago. The reason he's not here this year is a testing crash at St. Louis, where the Kart FedEx Series goes next.
That's right, yes, and looks as though Jimmy Vasser is in trouble here. He's slowed down and he's coming back in, I think, perhaps, or is he just trying to build up to speed with the tyres cool? Let's see, will he come into the pits again? He's on the inside. It does look as though Jimmy Vasser is coming back into the pit lane. And also
Alex Barron.
Yeah, in the pits already is Alex Barron, and that's an early stop. Lap number 25 has been completed. So early stages, and there must be problems for those two. We wouldn't expect to see them coming in for another 10 laps or so as yet. So interesting situation. Let me tell you, by the way, that as the fuel burns away, the leaders are lapping faster and faster. 170.2 miles an hour, the average speed last time around for Juan Montoya. But Fittipaldi almost as fast because he's still under a second behind.
I tell you what, they're 4 miles an hour quicker than Dario Franchitti. Dario must be stuck at this point behind Michel Jourdain on that lap to cost him that much time. And now we'll see Dario probably put in a real quick one, and he does. And he matches the speeds of both Christian Fittipaldi and Juan Montoya as the traffic is now becoming to play into the race.
We were looking on board from PJ Jones. There is Jones, and he's lining up Tarso Marquez for the move into 10th. Let's see. No, he doesn't take advantage of the opportunity there. Doesn't quite get enough of a drag. And various teams setting their cars up differently for this afternoon's race. Some going for the low downforce setup to be fast down the straightaways and then get a chance to slipstream past into the next corner. Some going for the high downforce, so they've really got the grip through the turns.
Oh, PJ's done really well. He started 16th. He's picked up a lot of positions and working on Tarso Marquez.
A little bit of moisture on the lens there, though, Guy. Do you think we've been worried about rain all day? Of course, we had a long delay to the start of this race due to rain. It looks as though we may be seeing a little bit of moisture in the air once again. Just going through to a clean piece of film on the cover of the camera. Just see the occasional drop, can't you? And that is a bit of a concern.
It is a concern as to whether we may get more rain. Of course, that also may be a concern because it may be coming off of Tasso Marquez's car. And no reports yet from the drivers of rain or the track being slick. And we are green flag at this point on lap number 28. Expect pit stops in about 4 or 5 more laps. But Montoya had a stranglehold on this one. But Christian has now got that lead down to 0.7 of a second.
It looks as though Jimmy Vasser is very much out of the running today. He might not be out of the race entirely if they can get that car going. But what a shame, he's had such a disappointing start to the season. He sees his teammate Juan Montoya win 2 races, and yet poor old Jimmy Vasser, the best result that he's had so far was in the season opener, 4th position at Homestead. Since then he's had a 12th, a 10th and 11th place finish, and it looks as though it's all over here today.
There's the big sign, the old steering wheel getting thrown out. Jimmy is not happy. Mr. Consistency, who normally scores always at least in the points, but not necessarily winning, has been 2nd and 3rd in the championship the last couple of years following his championship victory 3 years ago. And it's unusual too to see an engine problem for a Honda power.
We've got a yellow. There's a yellow flag, turn 4. Something's happened down at turn number 4. Let's see if we can pick out. Well, they got the slippery oil flag. It could be the moisture flag. They do put that flag out if it starts to rain as well. But we've heard that there is an engine blow. It could be Michael Andretti. We'll wait to get confirmation of that. We have seen him slip down the order over the last lap. Suddenly, Andretti, who was running in 15th position, his name running down the leaderboard now, and there it is. There is Michael's car, and it does look as though there's a bit of steam and smoke emanating from just behind the rollover hoop.
Don't forget, of course, Michael Andretti, teammate to Christian. Christian running the same engine with the Ford power, the Swift chassis and the Firestone tyre, so maybe there's problems here. Maybe when Christian sees this and hears this over the radio, of course, then it's going to make him worry just a little bit, I would imagine.
Yes, although we've seen some pretty impressive reliability. Now then, leaders perhaps take advantage of this yellow to make their first pit stops. This will be an interesting call. I would judge that they will come in at this stage. Lap number 30, it's just about ideal for the leaders to make their first pit stops. And there, that's a pretty amazing picture. You've got roads going in all directions there. This speedway built at Jacques-Repogua, the old Formula 1 Grand Prix track. And you can see a lot of that there, Guy, the former Grand Prix track. Last Grand Prix, actually, here was won by Nigel Mansell in a Ferrari. But that was a few years ago since they last ran the Brazilian Grand Prix here. And
you mentioned Nigel Mansell, someone who is trying to match his kart and beat his kart record is Juan Montoya, who is leading this race right now. But you mentioned the other track. It's kind of interesting because we're on the Emerson Fittipaldi Oval inside the Autodromo Nelson Piquet, and both of those guys involved in promoting this race and the Formula 3 race that took place earlier. As we see Michael Andretti, he's done for the day, he's out of the car. This can try and get that back to the pit area. And we see, interesting to see if Montoya has gone in, and yes he has. Christian, once the leader goes in, the other guys really, you've got to follow the lead and just go in.
So here we go, the battle in the pit lane now as Christian Fittipaldi leads the cars into their first round of pit stops. Fuel goes on board, a new set of tyres as ever, and then try to get that car out as quickly as possible. But this is where so many mistakes can be made. It's got away safely, but whoa!
Montoya, they sent him out, they saw him coming.
Yeah.
They look down pit lane, where they watch it very carefully, and then they put as much fuel in as they can to get him out ahead. But Franchitti does a great job, or his team does a great job, and they get him out ahead of Christian Fittipaldi too. Yes,
so there's a change there as Dario Franchitti now moves up into 2nd position, and Fittipaldi finds himself pushed back down to 3rd, and now we have the battle between Montoya and Franchitti once again.
And PJ Jones had a great pit stop and picked up about 3 positions.
Much as he did in Nazareth, they did a great job there as well on the pit stops. 33 laps completed here in the Kart Rio 200, round 5 of the championship. Juan Montoya has led from start to finish. He started 3rd place on the grid, took the lead into the first corner, and has led ever since that point. Franchitti is moved into 2nd after the first round of pit stops. Fittipaldi is 3rd, Canaan 4th, Carpentier 5th, and PJ Jones, after a tremendous stop from the Patrick team, has moved up to 6th place. 7th for Max Papis, 8th Tasso Marquez, 9th is Greg Moore, 10th Alanza Jr. Now, there's an impressive move up the order from Alonso Jr. Got both Penske's in the top 10. Brian Herta is in 11th place, with Cristiano D'Amata in 12th. The recap of the race so far, we've seen two leaders officially, because, of course, Christian Fittipaldi did lead when the green came out. We've got a problem for Helio Castroneves. And, in fact, this was a few moments ago. Apparently, this is a replay. Helio Castroneves catching fire, and he just seems to be suffering all the bad luck in the world.
If the guy has any luck, it's bad luck. Poor boy, Helio Castroneves having a great races in this Lola for Hogan, but then has problems
Jimmy,
every race we go to.
Tell us what was the problem here?
Let's hear from Jimmy now.
A lot of power. I noticed that the boost was down to 29.9, which is pretty much atmospheric conditions, and so we don't know if we lost a turbo or a header or something, you know, has something to do with the boost system. But you know, the odds have been with me over time. We don't really have too many mechanical failures, so you know, the team has been doing a good job that way. But it's just frustrating. You know, we're getting off to such a slow start here, one thing after another. But you know, there's still 3/4 of the season left, and we just got to come back swinging.
Yeah, it's been a long time. I can't remember the last time when we've had to talk to you with a DNF like this, but hopefully better things are right around the corner.
Well, I hope so, but things are looking good, you know, with Juan driving a fantastic race and leading this thing. You know, things are still looking good for Target Team.
Thanks, Jim.
All right, thanks.
Juan Montoya, he's referring to, of course, who is leading the pack around behind the pace car at the moment and waiting for the track to be cleared, both of Michael Andretti's car, which saw an engine blow up, which caused this yellow in the first place, and getting that car of Helio Castroneves out of the way, which subsequently caught fire. Montoya untroubled by all that so far. He's been up front, not running away with it so far, but definitely in a position to control it.
And we saw that Dario Franchitti was able to make some change, able to get out ahead of Christian Fittipaldi. Whether they made some changes and he can be a little bit quicker now in this next segment of the race. And of course, the key thing right now, the restart, when they come back around, and Juan is going to try and leave them, and Dario is going to try and stick with him. A lot of games going on right now as they come around to take that green flag.
Tony Kanaan is the yellow and red car that's sort of battling with Fittipaldi. Meanwhile, we've got a chance to hear from Helio Castroneves, who we've seen go out of this race already with the fire from around the back section of his car. We may be able to go down to pit lane and hear from Helio Castroneves, who was, of course, one of the stars at the last race in Nazareth.
The car was running okay. We were a little slow on the straight, but that's unfortunate. The weather, it's kind of difficult to set up the car. And when we left the pit, all of a sudden, the engine stopped. I thought something was in the gear or something like that, but it's not. And I saw in the back was fire, and I said, well, I better get out of here.
Yeah, indeed. I know it's tough in front of your all the family, friends, and everybody down here, but thankfully you're all right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll go for the next one.
All right, let's check with Jan.
Well, Gary, in regards to what Parker just said, with Gilles de Ferran going down after that pit stop, the 14th spot, the reason the air jack receptacle would not connect, there was some sort of debris in the hose. They had it in the right place, it just wouldn't raise the car, and unfortunately now he has to work his way back through the field.
Green flag, Juan Montoya gets away ahead of Dario Franchitti and Christian Fittipaldi. Watch out for Tony Kanaan in 4th place. Having made up a few places on that last pit stop, he now looks particularly racy and in with a chance of putting the pressure on Christian Fittipaldi.
And Patrick Carpentier obviously had a great pit stop too, because he's worked his way up from behind and back in 10th position up to the 5th spot right now. PJ Jones in 6th. And then Tasso Marquez in, Max Papis in 7th, Taco Marquez in 8th, and Greg Moore in 9th. So he didn't make up any time on his pit stop, but they may have taken the time to make sure they get all the fuel in.
Just had news that Paul Tracy's in trouble with officialdom. Paul Tracy has picked up a black flag for running over one of the air hoses in the pit lane on his last stop, and that means he has to come through the pits again, a drive-through penalty for Paul Tracy. It just always seems to go wrong for him, doesn't it?
And that's basically a lap. But by the time you do that drive-through and you get back up to speed, the rest of the field's been around and come around. Michael Andretti, of course, is out, as is Jimmy Vasser, Castroneves. Garcia and Sellers are a lap down, and now Tracy probably will be too.
Well, we've got a chance to catch up with Michael Andretti now.
Nothing went right for us. We had a lot of problems yesterday. Qualified terribly, and the car just being stuck back there in traffic wasn't running too well, so it's just going to blow. That's what he wanted to blow.
Well, this is a unique racetrack as far as what you use aerodynamically. Now you're going to St. Louis, a place I know you've tested. more comfortable there?
I hope so. You know, he ran pretty good there last year, and you know, we had a pretty good test there, learned a lot. So hopefully, you know, we'll be able to run as well as we did last year.
Okay, have a good run.
Thanks.
I have to say I'm surprised to see Michael struggling quite so much on this occasion. He ran very quickly last year here in spite of a penalty. He also had a drive-through penalty last year. He was up to third at one stage, dropped to 19th and got back up into fifth place. Doesn't seem as though they've got the calculations quite right, however, on Michael's car this weekend. His teammates doing well, though. Christian Fittipaldi still in third place, and there's Tony Kanaan in fourth place, still chasing after him, with Patrick Carpentier in fifth, then PJ Jones sixth, Max Papis seventh, Tarso Marquez in eighth, then Greg Moore down in ninth place, ahead of Alonso Jr. in 10th position.
Of course, Tony Kanaan, who we're watching right now in the McDonald's car, was the Rookie of the Year last year. He won the Indy Lights Championship the year before that, beating out his roommate and best buddy, Helio Castroneves. Castroneves is just wishing for some of the luck and some of the good fortune that is on Tony Kanaan would come his way a little bit, as he has struggled this year, although he's led races and been fastest, great runs in qualifying, just having no luck in the race. But Tony Kanaan certainly having some good runs, because he led a lot at Long Beach.
Yeah, great drive at Long Beach from pole position until the pressure got to him, and Juan Montoya came through to take the win instead. Richie Hearn shows us the way around this Rio Speedway as Juan Montoya continues to lead the kart Rio 200 after 43 laps have been completed. We're about 10 laps away from the half distance point. Franchitti in second place, Christian Fittipaldi in third. These three have been the story of the race so far. Again, they've pulled away from the fourth place man, who is Tony Kanaan. Interesting that the man who was running fourth earlier in this race must have had major problems in the first pit stop, because Gilles de Ferran is way down now in 14th position. There's one place ahead, in fact, of Roberto Moreno, standing in for Mark Blundell. So changes particularly for Gilles de Ferran, but no changes for these top three, except that in that last round of pit stops, Franchitti got ahead of Fittipaldi.
And de Ferran, his problems with the air jack, when he came in to do the pits, it wouldn't connect, so they couldn't get the car up off the ground and put the new tyres on. Moreno running right behind him back in 15th. Interesting thing is, the leaders again now are going to catch up with the slower cars, Gold to Salas and Michel Jourdain again, the ones they've already managed to put a lap on and struggled, and of course that can make a difference again. As we saw, Dario Franchitti got caught out behind Luis Garcia Jr. before, and it'll be interesting to see how they deal with traffic again.
Montoya driving absolutely superbly so far. An impeccable performance once more from this 23-year-old. There you're looking at Tarso Marquez, another young man who's impressing many people. Again, only 23 years old, extremely limited performance in oval racing, in champ car racing, and yet in both he's excelling here today. He's running in 8th position with the Penske, and he's right up underneath the rear wing of Max Papis there, who's in 7th position.
Do you suppose it's the fact that he's racing in Brazil has inspired him just a little bit here on this oval for him this weekend?
It could be, Guy. It could well be that Tarso Marquez is extremely fired up. And of course, I think it's very indicative that Penske are looking at all the options at the moment. By putting Tarso Marquez in that car, they're saying, well, you know, what's the problem here? Is it the car? Is it the team? How quickly is Alonso Jr. going? I think, you know, it's putting a bit of pressure on little Al. He's had that accident earlier in the season. They need to know whether it's the car, what the problem is. And Tarso Marquez is showing that the car can run competitively here.
But this is probably actually the first time it's really ran competitively in 1999. His teammate, Al Jr., now up behind him in the 9th position. And there you see de Ferran, he's working his way past Scott Pruitt. After that lengthy pit stop, he's trying to work his way back up through the field. He was in 5th position when they went into the pits. He now runs, just picked up the 13th spot from Scott Pruitt, and he'll be working on Brian Herter next. And there we see Roberto Moreno making some moves as he comes through. Roberto, the super sub in kart and IRL series, and he's obviously very happy to be back in the car again and proving to be doing quite well for filling in for Mark Blundell this weekend.
Battle of the Penskes here, Alonso Jr. and Tarso Marquez running absolutely side by side. Now, I talked about how well Marquez is going, but that's being a bit unfair on Alonso Jr. because he's gradually worked his way up the order here. He might have qualified a lot further down, but he has just got past his teammate, and that puts Alonso Jr. up into 8th place. So perhaps there's still life in Alonso Jr. You know, he's always gone much better in the race than he has in qualifying. And perhaps having Marquez in the team's just giving him that little bit of a spur and he's putting in a tremendous performance.
And, of course, they're still searching for that elusive 100th victory for Penske. It's been about 3 years now since they had a victory.
Now, we've just heard a report that somebody's engine's just let go. It's could be Dario Franchitti. Franchitti slowing down on the back stretch. Christian Fittipaldi goes past, and could this be an engine failure? Oh, it's Pruitt. Pruitt is the one who's actually got an engine failure, but there's definitely problems for Franchitti there because he lost ground and has lost that second place to Fittipaldi. Meanwhile, the yellows have come out, and Pruitt brings his Toyota-powered smoking Reynard into the pits. It looks as though it's very much the end of the day for him. He begins to clamber out. But what about up front? What happened to Franchitti there? Did he have some sort of problem, or did he just simply lose a bit of pace?
He may, of course, just on these ovals, they're so quick, he may have just even had a small lift. And just to get off the power, may have gone into one of the corners too hot, and then Fittipaldi just straight by him.
Scott Pruitt out of his car. He's had a very disappointing start to the season.
That's John Dick, his engineer. John Dick's been around this series and has won the Indy 500 a number of times with various drivers. One of the best guys in the business.
Just looking at some of the tear-off visors that the drivers use, and of course it's fairly critical with the amount of muck. We've seen there's a lot of muck around, in fact, on the onboard cameras. If you've been watching the view out of them, you've seen there's an awful lot of bits of fluid, bits of dirt on the screens, and the drivers are having that same problem with their visors. So it looks as though the teams might be trying to give him some more tear-off strips to be able to use in this race.
It looks like they're just going to basically stick that onto the helmet. And my bet is it's not going to stay there for very long. At 200 miles an hour, that thing's going to flap about. But if he's obviously run out of tear-offs and having trouble seeing, but of course to put that on, he's got to come into pits. And then do you come into pits and refuel and change tyres again? They just came in a few laps ago.
Yeah, not a good time. We're just under half distance, nearly at the half distance point now. Remember, if it does rain once half distance has been completed, then it is classified as a complete race, and the points will be called from there. They're behind the pace car at the moment, and I think we're going to get a full race in whatever happens here, because even if there's a rain shower now, I think they probably run the pace car for a sufficient number of laps to give it the half distance.
Yeah, they don't want to come all the way to Brazil, all this shipping and moving of all this stuff to come here and then not have a race or a full race, or to delay the rest of the race. So they've come a long way to get this race in. They've got a big turnout here too.
But the man of the moment definitely so far is Juan Montoya.
Driving an excellent race. He had a fantastic start, and we see one of the Penskes has pulled off, and I believe that was Al Jr., the lead Penske, because he just overtook Tarso Marquez. And now we see at the back of the field some of the lap guys are going in to make some pit stops. Obviously they're a lap down, they've got nothing to lose at this point. They can make some adjustments and try and make up that time.
Well, it's interesting that they should be choosing this moment to come in. There should still be some 56 laps to go in this race, and they'd be hard pushed to do that 56 laps on one tank of fuel. Everybody is going to have to stop but one more time, but it should only be one more time for all of the leaders. So an interesting choice of tactics there by some of the teams further back, and particularly by Penske. They always call some pretty impressive shots, and they've brought Alonso Jr. in, so they must think that this is a good time to bring him in.
That's Mauricio Guzman going back out there. They had some problems with the right side pod, using the old method of just banging on it and see if that makes it work better. But interesting, and you say tactics for Roger Penske, of course, the captain, as they call him, as one of the finest tacticians on the race track, obviously has a plan and a theory, and there's a whole reason to be bringing Alonso Jr. in.
Of course, not a lot to lose because they're both running about the same pace. They were running in 8th and 9th places, so perhaps it's the fact that they want to get one of those cars in the points. Do you know, Guy, this is actually the worst start to any season for Penske ever, because they've not scored any points in the first 4 races of the championship. Bear in mind, they've only had one car in most of the outings, so that's a little different to past years where they've had 2 and sometimes even 3 cars. But nonetheless, to have no points scored by such a top team, that really hurts them.
And actually quite ironic, because at spring training in Miami, when we were talking to Alonso Jr. and Roger Penske, they were really pumped up about this year, and in fact they were concentrating all their effort on one car, and everybody was together, and they really felt confident, and the car was good in testing. And then, like I say, after 4 races to have no points, it's like,
Yeah, big worries, big problems, and that's why, of course, they've decided to buy the Lola chassis to see where they're going wrong, try and evaluate. They can't really put their finger on why they're not up front with the car they've got, designed by John Travis, who's designed championship-winning cars in the past. He was the man really largely responsible for Nigel Mansell's championship-winning Lola some years ago. But it just doesn't seem to have quite come together. Having said that, on this occasion, of course, having just bought the Lolas, the Penske's now seems to be going much better. Yeah, that's right. So quite what they decide to do next, I suppose, depends on their test program. They'll be testing the Lola chassis, back-to-back evaluations with the Penske, and then just really see what the thing to do is with the car and whether they decide to run the Lola or the Penske in remaining races.
Of course, that Lola is one they acquired from the Bettenhausen team. Of course, Bettenhausen used to run Penske's. Now he runs the different chassis, but the poor old Bettenhausen team, they've destroyed 4 cars in the first 4 races, and that is why Hattori is not here this weekend. They've basically said to him, we're going to go testing with you and get you some more seat time in the car and hopefully get you up to speed. So this weekend, that is why he has been replaced by Golter Salas this weekend. And Golter had a good run here previously, and good to see Golter back in the car too.
That's right, the Brazilian who's certainly shone on several occasions in the past. Last year he did some races and qualified 4th at Long Beach. That's his best ever performance. There's the Goodyear blimp providing us with some tremendous overhead shots of this Emerson Fittipaldi Speedway in Rio de Janeiro. And, well, what a story it would be if Christian Fittipaldi could win this race. He's never had a good result here at all. He's never finished a race up there in the points, and he's running in 2nd place, but he's got to do something about the fact that Juan Montoya looks so comfortable up front. Meanwhile, down in the pit lane, we've got Scott Pruitt, hopefully in a moment, to be able to talk to him. Our latest retirement. Let's hear from Scott Pruitt.
By the time you got here, it looked like it was a much bigger problem.
It was. First, hi to my family at home. We think we picked up a puncture in the radiator. With all the debris on this track, we were fighting a little bit of overheating, and just continued to get worse. We were holding on good. You know, we went from, I think, 21st to 13th. Tough day for Toyota, but and Pioneer and all the guys, they did a super job, and we'll be back at St. Louis running them hard.
Okay, thanks. We'll get up top.
Here we go then, green flag coming out again on to lap number 55 as they cross the line this time. Juan Montoya once again showing that his lack of experience of racing this style with green flags, pace car periods, doesn't seem to faze him at all, does it? He never seems to make a mistake on the restarts, and he's off again.
Yeah, he's certainly learnt the restarts very well. Christian Fittipaldi running in the 2nd position, looking for his first ever kart win. Dario Franchitti in 3rd, having lost that 2nd position just before the yellow flag. Tony Kanaan continues in his 4th spot. Patrick Carpentier in 5th. PJ Jones up to 6th. And now Tarso Marquez in a great battle with Greg Moore on that restart, trying to hold off and keep his 8th position. Alonso Jr., we mentioned he made the pit stop. He dropped back from 9th to 16th, so look out for him. Maybe he'll be working his way back up through the field.
That's right, still on the lead lap, which is the vital aspect at this stage of the race, of course, to stay on the lead lap and then put yourself in position in the latter stages. Again, another view here of just how difficult it is to see anything. It's a very grey light today as well, isn't it? It's very gloomy still. We haven't got any contrast. And then they're also getting all this mess on the visors. It's a miracle they can see anything. And don't forget, they're doing 220 miles an hour in places.
I was going to say, add to that the fact that they're getting shaken about in the cars too, and their eyes, I mean, literally are forced to blink, and your eyes keep shutting on you. They can't see anything, and that's why Montoya is waiting for that chance to come to the pits and put that new visor on his car, or on his helmet rather, so he can see what he's doing. But he's going to wait until a scheduled pit stop, or at least a yellow flag a little further down the road, so it doesn't cost him any time.
Montoya opening up a little advantage again here, up to 1.26 seconds that last lap around, and he was the fastest of the top 3 across the line, an average of 169.5 miles per hour. So again, Montoya seems to have the pace. It isn't something that allows him to really escape, and of course the draft from his car, the slipstream, helps Fittipaldi stay somewhere behind him. Then we're looking down the list. Canard 4th, Carpentier 5th, Jones in 6th, then Papis, Marquez, Moore. Surprising to see Greg Moore so far down. He's always gone well at this particular racetrack. Of course, he was the race winner here last year. Before that, in 1997, he finished in 2nd place. And in 1996, he led this race twice, only to fail to finish with electrical problems. And yet, today, Greg Moore's been struggling, really, to get himself somewhere up into the top 10.
He's struggling here today, certainly. seems to be struggling. Maybe the Mercedes just not performing quite as well as it can here at this track. And Gilles de Ferran too, remember he dropped back down to 16th. He's worked his way back up to 12th and is steadily working his way up through the field again.
Yes, de Ferran in 12th, Roberto Moreno then in 13th position. And that's a respectable job from the super sub, the 40-year-old Brazilian standing in for Marc Blundell and just trying to keep his nose clean. He did have a little bit of an accident in the practice, but remember, all of these drivers had so little practice coming into this race. The whole of Thursday practice was rained out. Friday they got out in Friday morning, and then for Friday qualifying, they started qualifying in their normal single car qualifying, only for it to rain again and for them to all sit around for a while before eventually being able to complete qualifying. They did get the warm-up in this morning, but it means for people like Roberto Moreno and Walter Salles, who are coming back into the series for a one-off race, it just means very little track running. Now then, there's somebody else out of the race. That's Alex Barron.
Alex is out of the race. We saw him come in the pit stop, make an early pit stop before anybody else. Obviously some problems. Now he's come in and parked it. So far with Pruitt and Barron, the two Toyotas are out. We have one Ford out with Andretti, Honda out with Vassar, and Castroneves is also out with a fire on board of his car. The last guy running one lap down is Walter Salles, and he is currently in 22nd position.
Now then, as you can see, there are 47 laps to go. That's a little bit over half an hour of running still to go in this race, and we have another pit stop to be made within the next 10, 15 laps. I would think the leaders are going to have to make their second and final pit stop. Looking at the laps led here, Honda have led 60 laps. Ford have led just the one lap right at the start, courtesy of Christian Fittipaldi. Into the pits again comes, in fact, that's that is Maurizio Gugelmin coming into the pits. Maurizio Gugelmin in the number 17 car. It looks as though he's running a Roberto Moreno helmet almost, or else he's changed the colour scheme slightly on his crash.
It looks like he's got a new paint scheme on his helmet, but when he came in, it didn't look good because the crew, instead of doing the usual going straight to the tyres, they went straight to the rear cowling, and that was coming off. So obviously problems there for Mauricio Gugelmin.
A pole sitter here in the past. Didn't all come good for him, unfortunately. 1997, he took his first ever pole, just as Christian Fittipaldi has done on this occasion.
And again, last year, the Pat West team had a horrible year. This year, they thought they'd got it all turned around. But again, neither one of Mauricio or Marc Blundell scoring well in the points. Gugelmin's all the way back in 15th spot in the points. And Marc's in 17th.
Yeah, it hasn't been a great start, although, of course, Marc Blundell did run very competitively last time out in Nazareth, only to be caught out by the yellow flags. Montoya leads, Fittipaldi second, Franchitti third. Still plenty to go. 64 laps completed. Juan Montoya still in charge of this race. It might be by just 0.99 of a second over Christian Fittipaldi, but it's still the race lead. Franchitti in third, Canaan in fourth, Carpentier in fifth. Ahead of PJ Jones, Max Papis, Tarso Marquez, Greg Moore ninth, Cristiano De Mata 10th. And the final 2 point scorers at this stage in the race are Brian Herter, who's had a rather quiet, untroubled, but not particularly exciting run this afternoon, and Gilles de Ferran, who ran fourth earlier, only to suffer problems in his first pit stop. We've seen a list of retirements beginning to increase now. Jimmy Vassar, Michael Andretti, Helio Castroneves went out with a fire, Scott Pruitt out, Alex Barron out, and it also looks as though Maurizio Gugelmin has become the latest to add to our list of retirements. Let's go down to the pits and see if we can discover exactly what happened to Maurizio Gugelmin in the Pat West car.
We probably have a water leak. The temperature was climbing very high, was up to 110, so we decided to stop before we blow an engine.
Very tough weekend for you. You had problems with qualifying yesterday relating to the pop-off valve. Was the valve working okay today?
Yeah, the valve was fine today. The car was handling well. It's just once the temperature starts climbing, you lose so much power that there is no point to stay out there, especially here with those long straights. You need all the power that you can get.
I see a lot of things being kicked up in terms of dirt and debris. Does it really get all over your helmet? Does it impair your visibility at all?
Oh, it's the same as sandblast. It's just that we had a lot of rain. We hardly run on the circuit, so we're getting a lot of dust.
We're going to take a look down here at his helmet, and maybe you can see what we're talking about, guys, if they can pop the picture back. But there's some of the debris.
His helmet was brand new before this race.
Brand new before this race, and he didn't even get to run the whole day.
Wow. And Gary, when you're talking about overheating, that is the same problem
that has knocked out Alex Barron. So we thought maybe a couple isolated incidents of overheating, but now it's a trend because we hear that Cristiano Damana also has overheating problems. So with these changing temperatures and the humidity, it appears today as though a lot of guys having problems cooling the engine.
Well, that's interesting stuff. And you can actually see the amount of debris on the track there, Guy. Again, as they go down that backstretch, lots of bits of paper, plastic. Obviously, a lot of sand around from what Maurizio Gugelmin was saying there, and that's going to cause problems. Lots of engines already beginning to overheat, and we still have some 40 laps to go in this race.
40 laps to go, and unbelievable the look of the new helmet. We mentioned it looked like a new paint job, and it is a new helmet for Mauricio. Unbelievable the amount of dirt and debris for only doing 60-odd laps out there, and that can explain to us why Montoya is hoping to get that new visor when he makes his next pit stop. And the overheating problem, it is very humid here today. That could explain some of that, but I mentioned Cristiano Damana is reporting overheating problems. He's running quite competitively, just 8 seconds off the leader in 10th position. Actually, I say 8, that has now increased to about 13 seconds. So, yes, maybe he is having overheating problems.
Quick view at the front of the picture there of Walter Salas. We mentioned him earlier, driving this weekend for the Bettenhausen team. That team has been running Shigeaki Hattori so far this year, but Hattori, the Japanese rookie, has really struggled to get on the pace, and he's struggled to keep it on the island. He's damaged a number of Reynard chassis, and he's had to go away and think about it. Now then, we've got one of the Forsyth cars. I think that was Carpentier coming in, and it looks as though Carpentier may be the first of the leaders to come in for the second round of pit stops. With 38 laps to go, just about the right time to start making pit stops, but does that indicate the Mercedes engine a little bit more thirsty, perhaps, than the Honda and Ford power units?
That's going to be the interesting thing with Montoya running the Honda and Fittipaldi in the Ford, and then Franchitti in a Honda, and see how the fuel economy is on those two guys, or those two different engines, and we'll see who pits first. Because the other thing is, if Montoya does come in, I think Fittipaldi will just follow him in anyway, stay right with him.
And there is Tarso Marquez, and I think he overran, didn't he?
I think he overran, but whether he actually ran over the hose or not, I don't know. But it looked like he came in just a little too hot. Of course, they're going from the tarmac onto the concrete.
And he gets away now.
And you can see how filthy dirty his helmet is, too, the yellow there.
That's right, it really shows it up well, the yellow colour is on Tarso Marquez's helmet. Meanwhile, lapping traffic, there goes Christian Fittipaldi, running in second place, going past the car of Walter Salas. And Montoya also going past lapped cars. It looks like Luis Garcia. Again, here comes Tony Kanaan into the pits now. And remember, he was running in 4th place prior to this pit stop. The Forsyth crew, as it is now, the drive-through crew of the McDonald's sponsorship, going to work. It takes a long time to get the fuel on board. Remember, it's quite a long stint. They've still got a good way to go in this race, some 36 laps. He's got all the fuel on board that he needs to do that.
And his helmet looked remarkably clean compared to the other two that we've seen on the close-up there. So maybe Tony's just staying enough out of the distance to stop getting hit by all that flying debris and rubber. And now our leader, Montoya, in the pits, and Fittipaldi didn't follow him in. So Christian will lead a lap. No bonus points for that, but of course, certainly the pleasure of leading as the crew go to work. Taking their time.
He's putting on that visor. No, he's given up with the visor. Look, he tried it. He took it off the pole, but he thought to himself, there's no way this is going to work. Just covering up what is already a mess, and it probably doesn't make it any better at all. Away he goes. A great clean stop again from Montoya. Again, showing that his inexperience in this form of racing really doesn't seem to matter as Christian Fittipaldi comes in. He's got a back marker ahead of him in the pit lane there as well, so that could be crucial. He does get into the pits cleanly, and now the Newman-Haas crew go to work. He was just over a second behind Montoya when he came in, and that means Franchitti now is in the race lead.
And it also means that Montoya is getting this information over the radio, and he's got to put in a quick lap now to try and make up from that difference. Oh, a good stop by the Newman-Haas team, and Christian Fittipaldi is out and underway again. Franchitti, our new leader, he's going to have to pit soon, and then Max Papis could be our new leader.
I tell you what, though, it's interesting that Franchitti has managed to stay out there. It means he may have been able to run in the slipstream, not use so much fuel, and it means that they perhaps put a little bit less fuel in when Franchitti comes into the pits. and that could mean a quicker turnaround, and Franchitti could therefore get ahead. And it's all happening here. Juan Montoya has just retaken the lead from Christian Fittipaldi. Fittipaldi had got ahead as a result of the pit stop, but Franchitti's just coming out of the pits now. So this could be a battle between Montoya and Franchitti. Montoya snatching that advantage back from Dario Franchitti. But watch out for Franchitti. Where is he?
He should be right ahead. He should be right ahead here of Montoya, but he's on cold tyres, don't forget. And that's what happened to Christian. Christian got out and had to try and hold off Montoya on cold tyres. Just unable to do it. Montoya makes a great move down the inside, pulls away, but now Franchitti is the big one, whether he has managed to stay ahead and can hold him off. And then you see Christian went out wide, then he had to get out of the power, and that's where he lost all that ground.
Brilliant passing manoeuvre from Montoya, and he is ahead of Dario Franchitti. There they are, the two of them absolutely together again. Montoya and Franchitti, they finished in this order at Long Beach, and now they're running 1-2 again here at Rio. Amazing stuff. And although Franchitti was able to stay out there a little bit longer on that last stint and hopefully have a shorter pit stop, it wasn't quite enough. Montoya has managed to get ahead, and he can probably put that down to getting past Fittipaldi. If he hadn't got past Fittipaldi, he may well have been behind Franchitti as well.
May well have been behind Franchitti, and the same thing, it worked for him, the cold tyres, and it's tough to fight somebody off when you've got the cold tyres. It takes, you know, a lap or two to get some good heat in them. So now Montoya is actually just driving right away from Franchitti and Fittipaldi, and now you're seeing Max Papis. He was up into second, but he has now made his pit stop, and he's gone back to 8th spot right now.
But let us tell you what is actually the positions here, because although we're talking about the battle for the lead, in fact, they're not battling for the lead because of pit stop strategies. It's Alonso Jr. who is actually in the lead of this race so far, but we are expecting him to have to make another stop. Paul Tracy's in second, Robbie Gordon is in third, Richie Hearn is in fourth, and then it's Montoya. Montoya is actually in 5th place with Franchitti 6th and Fittipaldi 7th. So this is all very well, and it should mean that Montoya will go back in front once they make their stops. But if there should be a strangely timed yellow flag or something, that could really change things here.
And don't forget, remember, Alonso Jr. pulled out from 9th position and made an unusual pit stop, and we talked about Roger Penske's tactics then. Does Roger know something we don't know? Is there a huge cloud working its way over the track, and suddenly you get a huge downpour, and this race is going to be called because we're over the halfway mark? So it may be a piece of brilliance by Roger Penske, or it may not, because it could all backfire. Paul Tracy in second, and then Robbie Gordon in the Toyota in third, but he is definitely yet to pit.
Well, whatever it is, let's just take a moment to think about this from Penske's point of view. They have a car leading the race. Their other car is in 13th position at the moment. You're actually looking at Tarso Marquez here. They keep showing the car of, or in fact, has he got, we got Alonso Jr. there. Let's just check.
That is Tarso in the number 3.
Tarso Marquez in the number 3 car, yes. We keep seeing him rather than Alonso Jr. It is Alonso Jr. who's leading the race, though, by just 1.15 seconds from Paul Tracy, with Robbie Gordon in third, Richie Hearn in fourth. 4 names that have not featured really at all this afternoon, but thanks to a different pit lane strategy, they're up front. But we are expecting all 4 of them to make a pit stop before the end of this race, and we've got, what have we got now? Some 27 laps still to go.
Interesting enough, of course, Penske looking for its 100th career win, but also no American has won this race yet. We've had 2 Canadians win it and a Brazilian, and now we have 3 Americans in the top 4.
The first lap's being led by Alonso Jr. since Vancouver last year, so it's great to see the car running up front. And just looking at the speeds, 170 miles an hour there across start-finish line. Now that's one of the fastest average speeds we've seen, one of the fastest laps of the race there from Alonso Jr. So it just goes to show that they really have got this car working well here at Rio. And in spite of all the disappointment of the early part of this season, in spite of going out to buy Lola chassis, right here, right now, the Penske is working extremely effectively.
And we have another expired Toyota by the looks of things. Cristiano D'Amato, remember we reported overheating problems for him. He lost some time, and he's come in and immediately taken the wheel off, and they go to the rear cowling, and he is out of the car. Tough break. He had a great run going in Long Beach and at Nazareth, his best showing ever. Tough luck for those guys down here. Another thing nice to see, Ben, is the sunshine's come through finally after 3 dreary rains of, well, 3 dreary days of rain. I knew I'd finally get there. But nice to see the sun finally out.
Yeah, makes a change, doesn't it, after, as you say, so much dampness and misery coming into this race, and a long delay until it managed to get underway. Thankfully, the fans stuck around, they stuck at it, put the umbrellas up, put them down again, put them up again a few times, and are still here to enjoy what's proving to be a tremendous tactical battle, with Alonso Jr. just trying to squeeze his way past Roberto Moreno.
Wouldn't that be a turn-up for him? The first race of the year, he hits the wall, breaks his leg, misses the next couple of races. Nazareth, he goes, hits the wall again. What a great comeback for him. Now we have the yellow flag, and this is for, I believe, some debris in turn 4.
Right, now this is going to be interesting. It means it might be an opportunity for the likes of Alonso Jr., Paul Tracy, Robbie Gordon to come into the pits now. Richie Hearn has been into the pits meanwhile. And, of course, that will give them a chance, but it will still mean they'll drop back down to the tail of the queue of cars on the lead lap. So that will still put them down to around 16th position, I think, if Alonso Jr. chooses this yellow to come in. We'll have to wait and see.
You see Adrian Fernandez was in the pits there. Adrian, we haven't talked about him all day because there's really been nothing to talk about. The guy started towards back, and he's been basically in 16th and 17th position all day long.
Pit lane is closed at the moment. They will open the pit lane on the next lap around, probably. Usually takes a lap or so before they allow the leaders into the pits, and then they only allow the leaders, first of all, to come into the pits, and those cars a lap down have to wait another lap. Alonso Jr. will probably be making his stop soon. We'll have to wait and see. 22 laps to go in the kart Rio 200. Alonso Jr. and Paul Tracy lead the field, but they do have to make a pit stop in a moment. Adrian Fernandez, meanwhile, is out of the race. So the man who was second place in the championship coming into this race, it looks as though he is out. Now then, is Alonso Jr. coming in? Yes, he is. He's coming into the pit lane with Paul Tracy and Robbie Gordon. They will make their stops as quickly as possible, but it will, of course, drop them right down the order again. So having led for a while, having taken a gamble with the setup on the car and with the tactics more than the setup, Alonso Jr. will rejoin, but a fair way down the order.
A fair way down the order, but of course the advantage of doing it under the yellow is track position. They could be in 16th position and a lap behind. Now they're going to be in 16th and just a few yards behind the leader, but obviously you've got to get by all the other guys.
That's right, and it means that Tarso Marquez, his teammate, moves back up into 9th position, which is pretty much where he was before he saw his teammate leading. Robbie Gordon ahead of Paul Tracy there. So good stop from Gordon's new team.
He picked up a position. Paul Tracy came in second behind Alonso Jr., comes out third out of the 3 that made it into the pit stops.
So that puts it back to Juan Montoya leading. Let's hear now from Adrian Fernandez, who was only 2 points behind Montoya coming into this race.
Adrian Fernandez, did you make contact with the wall?
Yeah, I got a little bit loose out of 4, and you know, I just couldn't get it back, and I just brushed the wall in the exit.
Enough damage, obviously, to put you out to get into the suspension?
Yeah, we damaged the right front suspension and wishbone, and it was a shame. But, you know, we had some problems also with the brakes. My brakes were really low. I had to pump them out every time I was going into a corner. So, you know, we were having a little bit of trouble also getting out of the pit. So, not a good day for us, but we should be back for San Luis.
Thanks a lot, Adrian.
Thank you.
So Adrian Fernandez, a disappointing end to the day for him. Meanwhile, Juan Montoya leads Dario Franchitti. We're building up to a climax of the last 20 laps between 2 of the youngsters in the series. Franchitti now into his 3rd year and coming in as one of the championship favourites, of course. But he's found a new rival in Juan Montoya. He's already lost out to him in Long Beach, where the 2 battled up front. Franchitti's car just couldn't quite keep it together in the latter stages, and he dropped away from Montoya. Montoya coming through to win his first race. Then, of course, last time out in Nazareth, Montoya won again. Franchitti ran reasonably well up on that occasion, but never as high up as second. And now it's come to it once more, Montoya versus Franchitti. Identical kinds of cars. They both drive the Reynard chassis with Honda engine and Firestone tyres. One drives for Ganassi, a championship-winning team already. Franchitti, of course, drives for Team Green. They've yet to win a championship in their current form, although in a previous form they won the title with Jacques Villeneuve some years ago and with a different set of people involved.
And I hear that Jacques Villeneuve wants to get in on the Hawaiian Super Grand Prix at the end of the season, come back to the kart series. You see the race recap. We've had the 4 lead changes, or 5 changes amongst 4 different leaders, and 3 caution flags, not including the very first caution flag when we didn't get a green because the field was not bunched up enough. And the field and rest of the cars that are out of today's race, we just heard from Adrian Fernandez, Christian Demana with overheating.
Top 5 before?
And of course Vassar, very unusual to see him out. And he was in fact the first guy out, immediately followed by Michael Andretti on the same lap.
Yes, 2 of the veterans, if you like, and most experienced, 2 former champions out of the race in the early stages of this one. On board with Tony Kanaan, he's back into 5th place, but look at that. Look who's popped up into 4th place all of a sudden with a great last pit stop. Max Papis, driving the number 7 Miller Lite car that so nearly won this race 2 years ago in the hands of Bobby Rahal, and now Max Papis is up into 4th.
And Max did very well at the Oval in Japan, and we saw how excited he was just to have a good race result. But don't forget, he struggled for a couple of years with the Toyota power and not being as competitive as he knows he is, and then to get the Bobby Rahal ride in a very competitive car, he must be just absolutely thrilled. 4 races now, 5 races into the season. He's actually scoring points and running in the top 5, and he's enjoying that.
Yeah, it's good performance from Max Papis. He does love the ovals. He really does seem to go well on the oval tracks. You might not expect that for somebody who's come through European racing, but he adores to race on the ovals. Finished in 5th place on the first one of the season at Homestead. Now then, sunshine, but it almost looks as though there was a little bit of rain there as well. We'll have to keep an eye on that as we get ready to go green. Juan Montoya leads the field up into turn number 4 and sets off again at a fast pace.
He went early that time. Normally he's been waiting, but that time he went early. And you're right about, we did see some moisture on Tony Kanaan's inboard camera. It is sunny on the front stretch, but there you can see some of the moisture, so maybe rain is coming. Of course, they can call it a race because we're over the halfway mark, which means Montoya would get the win.
Well, it's 90 laps completed here, Guy. 18 laps to go. It depends, really, I think, how hard the rain is falling. If it's only a light little sprinkle, they may decide to just keep running the cars around and hoping that they can put in the full race distance. If it rains hard, then, of course, on slick tyres, these cars are an incredible handful, even at slow speeds, even at averaging 70 miles an hour. Look at the rain on that backstretch. You could really see it there. Can we see from the onboard camera? This one, of course, facing backwards, so it doesn't get so messed up by the rain. Difficult to tell from that picture, but there is certainly quite a heavy shower by the looks of it on that backstretch.
It's coming down sideways along that backstretch. We look at Richie Hearn working his way. He's in 16th position.
Juan Montoya leading the cars around Dario Franchitti. Now, this is really beginning to set things up. Just 1 lap to go to green flag. The question is, has Dario Franchitti got anything to answer Juan Montoya's pace here this afternoon? Montoya taking the lead from the start of this race, getting past Christian Fittipaldi, leading the best part of it, managing to get back in front after the second pit stops, overtaking Fittipaldi, also getting past Franchitti as he was just coming out of the pits. Montoya has proved himself at every test in this race so far, but he's got the final test to come. Guy, what do you think?
Well, he's certainly proven himself. We know they've all got enough fuel and tyres to go the distance. It's going to be basically a dash for the cash, and Montoya's going to have his mirrors full of cars, but I'm sure he's going to do a good job of holding them off. We saw some great racing at Nazareth where he was dicing with Castroneves, but kept working his way back up. He's looking awfully strong here today as we get ready for a restart.
That's right. What impressed me there so much was the way he dealt with traffic and the way he was patient dealing with Castroneves. He really didn't take too many risks, too many gambles, but when the moment came, he was always there. And that's pretty much the story of this afternoon as well. So far, no mistakes, but he's got a restart. Tyres are a little bit cool. They're trying to get some heat into them by weaving around. We'll just have to see what happens. Watch out for Max Papis there. Papis in 4th place as the green flag. Here we go. Juan Montoya gets the race underway once again. The green flag awaits him as he comes down the start-finish straight out of turn 4, and it looks as though he's made an excellent getaway again. Franchitti in 2nd place. Fittipaldi covering the inside to try and prevent Max Papis coming through as they go down towards turn number 1. Watch out for Papis. He's had a good afternoon here, but can he find a way past Fittipaldi? Not quite enough space there.
Trying to use that draft to get the pull on the slipstream so he can pull out and make and maneuver. In the meantime, it is Tony Kanaan coming up on Max Papis too. Papis looks like he went a little wide in that turn. maybe he lost a little downforce off the front wings and couldn't steer it round the turn. Canan made up some time, but unable to get by Pappas. Now Pappas again will chase down Christian Fittipaldi. Looking to make up ground under braking there.
Great to see this performance from Max Pappas, his best performance today. Remember, a 5th place in the season opener at Homestead, and now here he is running in 4th position, and a chance perhaps to get past Carpentier there, trying to get past Tony Kanaan in the background. Blue and white car, Patrick Carpentier tries to get down the inside. There's not quite enough room. Well, there was enough room, but he didn't have quite enough speed.
It seems like any time someone makes a move on the car in front of them, the guy behind them seems to make up the time, and then they get a move on them. So you've really got to watch your mirrors and be careful here.
So it's all very close, very tight as we go into this final part of the race. And Patrick Carpentier, you're looking at him from the back of Tony Kanaan, and it's yellow. There's a yellow flag. Cars have slowed down again, and we've had a report of some sort of contact between a couple of cars. Michel Jourdain Jr. and Robbie Gordon supposedly have got together, so we've got another yellow flag. What a shame. We're into the final 10 laps of this race, and problems, safety cars.
Well, that's a shame for Robbie Gordon too, because he was up as high as 3rd at one point, although he was off sync with the pit stop, but he was now up and running about 15th position, having gone to the back of the pack, having made his pit stop, but it was having a good run for Robbie Gordon.
Yeah, great shame for him. He's had a bit of an up-and-down season so far. Robbie Gordon, the Californian, always plenty of spirit in his driving, and he's getting together with that new team that they've set up this season.
It was a last-minute sort of put-together team too, so they really haven't had much time, and of course working with the Toyota engine and a new crew and everything. We take a look at Chip Ganassi. He's always got a big smile on his face, particularly at this point with Montoya leading, talking to Mo Nunn, the engineer there.
Yes, Juan Montoya has got to do it again, hasn't he? He did a great restart just then. It didn't look like Dario Franchitti could do much. He stayed with him, but certainly didn't look like challenging him into turn 1, which is got to be the favourite place on the restart. We saw Tony Kanaan having a little look down there as well. You've got to be quick out of this last turn and get a good run down, start-finish straight. That's exactly how Montoya took the lead in the first place in this race, and that's what Franchitti's got to try and do.
And he's actually been kind of sneaky, Montoya, because on all the restarts, he's actually started at a different area. You know, one time he started at the back straight, one time he waited till he was in the turn. So he's catching Franchitti off guard a little bit, and of course Dario's got to try and figure out when he's going and to go with him.
So Montoya again weaving around behind the pace car. Can he really make this 3 wins in a row? Robbie Gordon, meanwhile, comes into the pits. One of the cars that we'd heard had contact. Michel Jourdain Jr. was the other one. Tyre change, a rip-off from the visor. And is he going to be sent back out, or are there other problems? No, it looks as though they're going to get Robbie Gordon back into this race, so that's good news. He rejoins the field, but obviously a long way down.
And stays on the lead lap, of course. He'll be back in the 15th position, the last of the cars on the lead lap.
Here's the field summary then. Montoya leading from Franchitti, Fittipaldi, Max Pappas, Tony Kanaan, Patrick Carpentier, PJ Jones, then Greg Moore down in 8th place, Tarso Marquez in the Penske 9th, Gilles de Ferran in 10th, ahead of Brian Herta, Roberto Moreno, then Alonso Jr. in 30th. That strategy not really working to good effect for Little Al. Then it's Paul Tracy and Robbie Gordon, the other cars that were up front a while ago. Then Gualter Sales still in the race, Jourdain, Richie Hearn, and Luis Garcia Jr. The rest of them out of the race. So we see 8 cars not in this race any longer, but most of that has been mechanical damage. We've seen remarkably little incident in terms of getting it wrong and hitting the wall this afternoon.
Absolutely, very clean race here. It's been quite amazing actually to have it this clean at this track, and very quick. It's good to have 15 cars still on the lead lap and 1 or 2 that are still running only 1 lap down.
Let's get a chance to hear from Chip Ganassi.
Magic left in the bag of tricks? Well, you know, Gary, there's 8 or 9 laps to go or something. We just want to make sure we get to the finish here. Anything can happen, these crazy races, you know, in the end. We got a lot of race to go. How impressed have you been by what this young man has accomplished leading up to this race, only his 5th in Champ Car history? Somebody came up to me this weekend in Brazil here and said he was the next Senna. And maybe they're not wrong. High praise indeed.
That is high praise, as Gary Gerald rightly says. Well, I don't know, Guy. I mean, looking at the performances that Juan Montoya's put in, okay, he still hasn't won this race, but he's driven superbly well this afternoon. He's taken 2 wins coming into this on different kinds of track, on a street course, on a 1 mile oval at Nazareth, now on this Roval, as we call it. He's been quick. I can understand why people are saying things like that.
And wait till you put him on a road course, a regular road course, not a street course, somewhere like Road America or Mid-Ohio, which is what he's used to racing on. Then he's going to be very good too. I think Montoya's obviously Chip Ganassi, they gave him the test drive and they picked him out immediately. They said this guy's got what it takes, and he's proven it already just in the third race of the season.
That's right, and he was very special in Formula 3000 over the last couple of years. Of course, behind him, Dario Franchitti. He's got the experience of winning races, but he hasn't won a race yet this year. He's finished second to Montoya once. That was in Long Beach. He's been up in the points consistently, but it's just not quite what he wants. He needs to be winning races to really attack in the championship. The team putting an awful lot of work into getting him up there and making sure that he's competitive on every kind of track. This must be a nervous time down in the pit lane for everybody there. Let's hear from the man who basically runs the operation on a day-to-day basis, Kim Green.
Well, that would be Kim Green that would make those decisions and talk to Dario on the radio. We heard from Chip Ganassi. We tried to find out what was going to happen on the restart. What is your strategy?
What did Chip tell you, first of all? Then I'll tell you ours. No, obviously we're going to give it a go. We've been saving fuel as much as possible all day, hanging in there, and we've got one slight problem where we have lost our shift without lift, which makes it a bit more difficult for Dario. He's very happy with the race car, so we're going to have a go as soon as it goes green and see if we can't get by the number 4 car.
So the main problem with the shift without lift missing is just the time down the straightaway. Do you lose a lot?
Well, he feels it's a bit of a disadvantage, and I think it certainly has shown previously that it could be, but we're confident he's a very good driver and he can get it job done.
All right, should be fun to watch. Thank you.
Little explanation. The shift without lift means that, of course, the drivers have got their foot flat to the floor on the accelerator. They just pull back on the gear lever each time they change up, and the electronics allow the engine to cut momentarily to allow that gear change to take place. Now, if that's not working properly, there will be time lost on each of those up changes.
Those changes will take a little more time because you've got to breathe the throttle and then get back on it again, and of course you've got to allow the gears to engage. So it's a little tricky, and that's probably costing Dario a little time.
Right, we're getting ready to go green. This should be, hopefully, the last restart, touch wood. And if it all goes according to plan, Montoya floors it this time as they go up the back stretch through the kink and then heading towards turn number 4. They come down out of turn 4 onto the front stretch, and look at the lead that he's opened up over Dario Franchitti. A huge lead, and in fact Franchitti's got to watch out because Fittipaldi's having a go down the inside. Fittipaldi trying to go for second place, but it doesn't quite work, and now Fittipaldi's got to watch out from behind because Max Papis is there to pick up any pieces. Montoya has driven away again, and it could well be that Franchitti was just hindered a little bit in his attempts to keep up with that gear change.
With that gear change problem, and the fact that Montoya went really early this time, down the middle of the back straight. Great tactics by Montoya to change each time we've had a restart where he goes on the gas.
Yeah, pulling away again, Montoya. Look at that. He's opened up an advantage that should see him safe now with some 7 laps to go. 5 laps to go, in fact, as they go across the line this time. The laps passing by extremely quickly there. Christian Fittipaldi. He started on his first ever pole position, but unless something very peculiar happens, he is not going to win his first race here this afternoon. It's been a good start to the season, though, for the Brazilian. He finished in 9th place in Homestead, 3rd in Japan, 5th in Long Beach, 7th in Nazareth, and a 3rd place here would certainly keep him up there in the overall championship. But Montoya driving real perfectly again, right out to the concrete wall, and it looks as though, barring disaster, he should have wrapped this one up.
Montoya looking very, very strong. Dario's got a little bit of a gap between himself and Christian right now. Christian needs to worry a little bit about Max Papis, who's looking awfully strong. And Montoya, he's stretched that lead to 1.5 seconds, I'd say, by now. Tony Kanaan also having a great run in the 44 McDonald's car, trying to get into the podium finishes. And as you mentioned, Christian is probably one of the best starts to a season he's had in his career in kart, with 2, if he gets it today, 2 third-place finishes on the podium. That's more than he's done in previous seasons.
That's right. So Christian Fittipaldi can be well pleased with the start of this season. Certainly been a lot better than for his teammate Michael Andretti. The last couple of races have not gone at all well for him. 3 laps to go then, and Juan Montoya is heading for a hat-trick of victories. And what does this tell you about not only the driver but the team? Reliability has always been tremendous for the Ganassi team. Today, they've seen a problem. They had Jimmy Vasser go out. Very uncharacteristic to see a mechanical retirement for one of these cars. But for Montoya, The car has run absolutely faultlessly in these last 3 races.
Oh, big wobble there by Montoya coming out of that turn. That was a close moment for him.
Yeah, very close. In fact, he's doing very quick times into the 38s. The only driver into the 38 seconds bracket. Everyone else just in the 39. And that shows you just how hard he's still pushing.
Pushing it very, very hard at this point. We saw what happens when you push it that hard. 2 to go. Montoya's probably got a huge smile on his face at this point, listening for all sorts of noises coming from the car and hoping he can make it 3 in a row. And I think as a rookie, he'll be the first person to have done that.
Alex Zanardi never won this race. He came close last year when that battle with Greg Moore was decided in just the closing laps when they came up to lap Arndt Meyer. Jimmy Vasser has never won at this track either. But Ganassi looks set for victory here today in Brazil. Just one more lap for the Colombian, and he is going to score a hat-trick of victories in the early season. What a way to start his Champ Car career. He comes up through turn number 2 along the backstretch, building up the speed once again to just over 215 miles per hour. The car has behaved impeccably this afternoon, and he has driven superbly. He comes out of the final corner, and Juan Montoya is going to do it. The championship leader coming into this race is going to extend his championship lead, and Juan Montoya makes it a hat-trick of wins. The Ganassi team celebrate down in pit lane, and this boy is a real revelation in the 1999 season.
There you see Chip high-fiving with Mo Nunn, Rob Hill, and Tom Anderson, and the rest of the guys on the pit wall. They have got to be thrilled with that. Montoya, 3 in a row, plus the bonus point for leading the most laps. He's going to extend his championship lead because Adrian Fernandez making contact with the wall earlier, getting no points here today. And Greg Moore finishing a little bit further down in the top 10, won't score as many points as he would like.
Dario Franchitti holding on to take 2nd place, then Christian Fittipaldi 3rd, just holding off Max Papis and Tony Kanaan. The 3 of them side by side, having enjoyed a good battle there.